I'm Maggie Thompson, 42 years old. As usual, I woke up at 5:30 a.m., before the alarm clock rang. My husband Tom, 46, is still sound asleep next to me. I quietly slip out of bed and peek into our son Ethan's room. 5-year-old Ethan is sleeping in his superhero pajamas, hugging his stuffed animal. Looking at his sleeping face warms my heart. I head downstairs to the kitchen and switch on the coffee maker. As the rich aroma begins to fill the room, it helps wake me up in the quiet of the morning. Looking out the window at the autumn scenery of Minnesota, I can see the maple leaves starting to change color. The fall colors are early this year, I catch myself saying out loud. After taking a sip of coffee, I start preparing breakfast. While cooking Tom's scrambled eggs and Ethan's favorite dinosaur-shaped pancakes, I mentally organize today's schedule. Work at Heartland Grocers, dropping off and picking up Ethan from kindergarten, and we're having Tom's parents over for dinner tonight. It's going to be a busy day. My job in the deli department at Heartland Grocers, where I've worked for over 10 years, is my pride and joy. I love chatting with customers while serving food made with care. Just as breakfast is ready, I hear Ethan's little footsteps coming down the stairs. "Good morning, Mama," he says with a sleepy but smiling face. "Good morning, sweetie. Did you sleep well?" I ask, and he nods vigorously. Even though Ethan is 5 now, I still feel as fond of him as when he was a baby. Seeing his innocent smile and curious eyes warms my heart. At the same time, I feel the weight of responsibility to protect and raise this young son. By the time Tom comes downstairs, breakfast for the 3 of us is laid out. He quickly drinks his coffee and nibbles on some toast. "I have an important contract today," he says. Tom, successful as a real estate agent, always seems busy with work. After breakfast, everyone starts getting ready to leave. Ethan puts on his little backpack, making sure not to forget his favorite Transformers figure. Tom dresses in his suit and picks up his briefcase. I take one last look in the mirror to check my appearance. At 42, there's certainly a bit of fatigue visible on my face, but my eyes still have the same spark. I make a silent promise to do my best today, for my family and for myself. After dropping Ethan off at kindergarten, I head to Heartland Grocers. I'm ready to greet customers with a smile, just like any other day. The afternoon shift at Heartland Grocers passed with the usual busyness. While slicing some roast beef for Mrs. Wilson, a regular customer, at the deli counter, I was chatting about my family dinner preparations. "Pot roast tonight." "How lovely, Maggie." "Tom and Ethan are lucky fellows," Mrs. Wilson said, and I nodded with a smile. "Yes, I think Ethan will be especially pleased. He's had quite an appetite lately." Just then, Mr. Peterson, the store manager, approached me. His expression lacked its usual calmness. "Maggie, could you come with me for a moment? There are some police officers in the office." For a moment, I thought it must be some mistake. But seeing Mr. Peterson's serious expression, I felt a tightness in my chest. "Of course. Mrs. Wilson, I'm sorry. I need to step away for a bit." As I took off my apron, I followed Mr. Peterson. My mind was racing with possibilities. A traffic ticket. Or had something happened in the neighborhood? Opening the office door, I saw two uniformed police officers standing there. The older one looked at me with kind eyes. "Are you Mrs. Thompson?" "Yes, I am." I could hear the tremor in my voice. The younger officer took a deep breath before he started speaking. "I'm afraid we have some difficult news about your son, Ethan." At that moment, it felt like the world had stopped. The officer's words seemed to come from far away, slowly reaching me. "He was found, deceased, in your car." It took me a moment to understand the meaning of those words. What? What do you mean? Ethan should be at kindergarten. The older officer quietly continued the explanation. Your car was parked in the supermarket parking lot. A passerby noticed something was wrong and called it in. In my mind, I flashed back to the morning. After dropping Ethan off at kindergarten, I had come here to work. How could he be in my car? But that's impossible. I dropped my son off at kindergarten. He should be there right now. My voice sounded unusually calm, even to my own ears. But inside, fear and confusion were swirling. The officers looked at me with sympathetic eyes. "Mrs. Thompson, we understand how you feel. But if we could just confirm, did you definitely drop your son off at kindergarten this morning?" That question made something crumble inside me. I quickly took out my phone and, with shaking hands, dialed my mother's number. "Mom, where's Ethan right now?" My mother's voice came back calmly. "What are you talking about, Maggie? Ethan's right here. He's having his snack." The moment I heard those words, my legs gave out. The officers rushed to support me. "Mrs. Thompson, are you all right?" I took a deep breath and regained a bit of composure. "Officers, there seems to be some mistake. I just confirmed with my mother that my son is safe." The officers looked confused. "But the child found in the car." At that moment, a terrible thought crossed my mind. Tom's unusual behavior lately, and the conversation with my friend Linda. "Excuse me, could you tell me the characteristics of the car?" When the officer answered, it was indeed my car. But Tom had borrowed it this morning, saying it was so closer to the office. With a shaking voice, I said, "Officers, please check again. That child might not be my son." After the police officers left to reconfirm, I sat in the office chair, holding my head in my hands. My heart was pounding, and my hands were shaking. "Tom, what on earth happened?" Mr. Peterson gently placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "Maggie, don't you think you should go home?" I nodded weakly and stood up. On the way home, my mind was in chaos. Tom borrowing the car, his unusual behavior lately, and the conversation with my friend Linda, all these fragments kept appearing and disappearing in my mind. When I got home, my mother was there with Ethan. The moment I saw my son, tears welled up. As I held Ethan tightly, I could faintly hear his voice asking, "Mama, what's wrong?" I briefly explained the situation to my mother and asked her to put Ethan to bed. Then I sat on the living room sofa, waiting for Tom to return. The clock ticked slowly. Just after 9 p.m., I finally heard the front door open. Tom came in looking exhausted. I could see his eyes were red and his face was pale. "Tom," I called out quietly. "We need to talk." He flinched for a moment but slowly sat down on the sofa. "Tom, the police came to my workplace today." I could see the color drain from his face. "What happened? Why was there a child in my car?" Seeing me struggle for words, Tom covered his face with his hands. His shoulders started to shake. "Maggie. His voice was trembling. "Please forgive me." At that moment, something inside me crumbled. All the emotions I had been holding back came flooding out. "Forgive you." "Tom, what on earth happened? Explain." Tom took a deep breath and slowly began to speak. 3 years ago, I had an affair with Linda. A sharp pain shot through my chest. Linda, my best friend. At that time, Linda got pregnant. We decided to have the child. I was at a loss for words. 3 years, they had been hiding this all this time. Today, Linda had an urgent matter. She asked me to look after the child. I had an important meeting, but I had to take the child with me in the car. During the meeting, I left her sleeping in the car. When I came back, Sarah wasn't moving. I panicked and just ran away. Tom's words trailed off. I was shaking with intense anger and sadness. Why didn't you tell me? For 3 years. I was scared. Scared of losing you, my job, everything. Tom's words now sounded like mere excuses. So you ended up taking an innocent child's life. My voice had turned ice cold. Tom nodded silently. Silence dominated the room. After a while, I quietly said, "Go to the police. Tell them everything." Tom looked up and stared at me. His eyes were filled with regret and fear. "Maggie, there is no we anymore, Tom," I said calmly. "What you did is unforgivable." Tom slowly stood up and staggered towards the door. After I heard the door close, I felt all the strength leave my body. The next day, I was called to the police station. I was informed that Tom had turned himself in and that Linda was also being questioned. And I learned the name of the child who had passed away. Sarah. After leaving the police station, I sat on a park bench and quietly cried. Anger towards Tom, a sense of betrayal from Linda, and above all, a deep sadness for the innocent life lost. All these emotions were swirling inside me. At that moment, my phone in my pocket vibrated. Looking at the screen, I saw a message from Linda. "Maggie, I'm so sorry. It's all my fault. I'm not asking for forgiveness. But I want you to know the truth." I stared at the message for a while, unsure whether to reply. In the end, I put my phone away and took a deep breath. I can't imagine what life will be like from now on. But one thing is certain. I have to be strong for Ethan. He only has me now. As I left the park, I felt a faint glimmer of hope. This might not be an end, but a new beginning. Thinking that way, I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. Walking through the bustling streets, I made a promise to myself. No matter how tough it gets, I'll keep moving forward. For Ethan, and for myself. A few days after the police questioning, I made a decision. I needed to meet Tom and Linda in person to hear the whole truth. I contacted both of them and arranged to meet at a cafe, a neutral location. On a chilly autumn day, I arrived at the cafe early and sat by the window. Clutching a hot coffee in my hands, I waited for the two to arrive. Tom appeared first. His face showed clear signs of fatigue and regret. A few minutes later, Linda arrived. Seeing my former best friend, my heart was filled with complex emotions. "Sit down," I said calmly. The two silently took their seats at the table. After a moment of silence, I spoke up. "Tell me everything. No lies." Tom took a deep breath and began to speak. 3 years ago, at the company's New Year's party. As I listened to his words, memories of the past came flooding back. Back then, I was struggling with raising Ethan, and our couple time had decreased. Linda was a good friend who listened to my complaints. Ironically, that same friend had stolen my husband. Linda continued, tears in her eyes. "At first, I thought it was just a momentary mistake. But..." I laughed bitterly at her words. A momentary mistake that lasted 3 years. They both lowered their heads. Suppressing my emotions, I continued with my questions. "When you found Sarah, deceased, why didn't you call the police immediately?" "We panicked. We were afraid our relationship would be exposed." I rushed to the scene after getting a call from Tom. But it was already too late. "So you both just ran away, leaving the child's body there?" "Yes, it was the worst decision we could have made. Our minds went blank, we couldn't think straight." "I can't believe it. Do you think such cruel actions can be forgiven? An innocent child's life was taken. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you tell me?" Tom answers, "I was scared. Scared of losing everything. And as a result, an innocent life was lost." My voice echoed coldly. Linda let out a sob. "Sarah, she was everything to me." Hearing that name sent a sharp pain through my heart. Sarah, a young life robbed of its right to live. Do you too understand how many people you've hurt with your selfish actions? My voice rose slightly. Other customers in the cafe were glancing our way. But now wasn't the time to worry about that. "Maggie, we're truly sorry," Tom started to say, but I raised my hand to stop him. "It's too late. Words of apology won't change anything." Linda, sobbing, says, "We're not asking you to forgive us. But forgive." I laughed sarcastically. We're not at that stage yet. It will take time. Finally, I stared at both of them intently. What do you plan to do now? Tom answers, I'll take full responsibility. I'll probably go to prison. Linda nodded too. I need to atone for my sins. I sighed deeply. Yes. That might be the only thing you can do now. Before standing up, I left them with some final words. Don't ever appear in front of me again. For Ethan's sake too. As I left the cafe, I felt the burden in my chest lighten a little. Learning the truth was painful, but I think it's the first step towards a new life. A year has passed since then. Tom was charged and is serving his sentence in prison. I heard that Linda moved to another state. Ethan and I have started a new life as a single-parent family in a new home. It was tough at first, but with the support of those around us, we're slowly moving forward. At Heartland Grocers, I was promoted to manager, taking on a more responsible position. Balancing work and parenting is challenging, but seeing Ethan's smile makes all the fatigue disappear. The other day, we celebrated Ethan's 6th birthday. As I watched my son blow out the candles on his cake, I nearly burst into tears. I'm filled with gratitude that we can spend such happy moments together after overcoming such difficult experiences. The future is still uncertain, but I have the courage to move forward one step at a time. Walking this new path of life with Ethan, that is my hope and happiness now.